Hi everyone, welcome back to Cafe Oleh. My name is Jay. I'm a volunteer with Nefesh B'Nefesh. I myself made Aliyah with Nefesh B'Nefesh. And here at Cafe Oleh, we go over the everyday Hebrew you need in Israel to succeed, whether that's paying your bills and reading them, going to the grocery store and reading nutritional labels, keeping up with the news, striking up a conversation, going on a date, going on a job interview, all the everyday conversations and language that you used in your respective countries of origin, but here in Israel and here in Hebrew. As always, we want to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover. If you are here on the Zoom call, please write in the chat box, the chat window, if you have any specific requests for upcoming classes. You can also email us at Nefesh B'Nefesh directly. And in addition, all of our previous lessons are up on youtube.com. Just type in Cafe Oleh or Nefesh B'Nefesh, and you'll see a playlist of all of our previous sessions. I know most recently we've gotten requests for everything from terms about the summer and weather to travel to how the roads work here in Israel, and certainly the electoral system and the political system here. All of those have previously been covered, and they're recorded, so you can watch them at your convenience on youtube.com. This class will also be up in the next 1 to 2 days. If you're joining us live and you have any questions about this specific class as we get started, please write it in the Q&A window. Anything else, questions, critiques, compliments, requests for future classes, please write that in the chat. So today we're going to go into part 3 of everyday expressions and common expressions in Hebrew. Think of this like kind of idioms, but not really. This is more like the sophisticated English or your respective mother tongue that you have yet to learn in Hebrew. And as such, I've put together some sample sentences for these words. These are words that really stand apart, will make your Hebrew rather stand apart, just like they do in English. And you use them very often in English, so too we do here in Hebrew. So with that, let me open up our lesson for today. So as always, Hebrew is going to be in the middle, transliteration on the right, English on the left. The Hebrew has the dots and the bars called nikud that we use to indicate vowel sounds, even though in everyday Hebrew that is not normally written. Like I said, these are everyday expressions. I'm going to go through them and explain them to you and how they're used. And there's a sample sentence I'm going to read both at a slower pace and at a regular tempo that you would hear on the street. Again, some of these words, some of these sentences may be a little too advanced for some of you, as we have many people at an intro level here on this class, but part of learning a new language is breaking your teeth on things, especially when it's language that you would use in your everyday life elsewhere in the world. I believe in not patronizing beginner level Hebrew students, and you should learn just like you learn the words and expressions that you use in your everyday life in other languages. So let's get started. Totally random selection, but these are ones I myself have used in the last few days. Certainly I hear quite often, and I think are very helpful, both positive and, as you'll see, some negative, but that's life. Okay, the first one, ma yesh lecha or ma yesh lach. Ma yesh lecha or ma yesh lach is best translated, as I wrote here in English and wrote, to what's with you. Or you could translate it as what's wrong with you. But the idea is you're calling someone out on something in a very direct way. You could think of it as brusque, but you're really putting them on the spot when you ask this. And this changes based on is it masculine or feminine, right? So if you're speaking to a man, you're going to write ish lecha. You're going to say lecha. If you're speaking to a woman, lach. Okay. As always, you can screenshot this, by the way. You can write them down in old school pen and paper. But again, this will be up on YouTube in the next few days. So if you don't catch all these words and you can't write it all down, YouTube is a great source to, at the very least, pause the video, come back to it, or screenshot it as you would like. So, ma yesh lecha. And this is how you would say it. You would say, ma yesh lecha, right? You put a little bit of a whine to it, or you could say it very flat, ma yesh lecha. right? A little flat, but a little bit of emphasis at the end to indicate this is about you, not me. What's with you? What's wrong with you? What's up with you? Okay, that's the meaning behind ma yesh lecha. This isn't meant to be translated literally because it won't make sense if you translate it literally. Okay, this is an expression veering more towards an idiom. Okay, so ma yesh lecha to a man, ma yesh lach to a woman, asking the question, what's with you? Okay, and the other expression we're going to use in this sample sentence that's coming up is kol pa'am mechadash, or kol pa'am mechadash, as you'll hear it said. Kol pa'am means every time. Okay, kol, every or all. Pa'am, time, T-I-M-E. Mechadash. Chadash means new. Mechadash you could understand as anew. And that's why I put it in parentheses, because kol pa'am mechadash means on its own every time. But the inclusion of the word mechadash indicates, as we would say in English, every time anew, or each time anew, or every time from scratch. Meaning that this is something that happens on a regular basis, or it's not the first time that this has happened, as opposed to something that is set, something that happens on a regular basis. This is something that maybe not be so set, but it's also not the first time it happens. So here's the sample sentence. We're going to read it together. I'm going to read it slowly. Then I'm going to say it how you would hear it on the street or how I would pronounce it. And then we're going to go through the words. Tagid, ma yesh lecha? I'm going to actually read it slower than this. Tagid, ma yesh lecha? למה צריך לעשות בלגן כל פעם מחדש? Okay, that's the slow version. I'm going to say it now how I would say this, and I believe I have said this sentence, this question in some iteration at some point. תגיד, מה יש לך? למה אתה צריך לעשות בלגן כל פעם מחדש? Right, you've heard that intonation in someone getting a little riled up and asking a question before in Hebrew. Even if you didn't understand the words, you know that tone. That's what this question is all about. It's very confrontational, and it's about the other person. It's not necessarily about you, although projection is real. So let's go through what this means. Tagid, ma yesh lecha? Tagid is the both command and the future tense of the verb lehagid, which means to tell. We've gone through these words before in the past, and you can find this lesson also on youtube.com, where we talked about all the different verbs that in English sound very similar definition-wise, but have a slight difference. Tagid is one of them. Tagid is used in the future tense to mean tell me something, right? Or talk to me. But that's Tagid here is the best translation for tell me. Ma yesh lecha, our expression here. What's with you? Tell me what's up with you, or tell me what's with you. Lama tzarich la'asot balagan kol pa'am mechadash. Lama tzarich, why do you need? Why do you? Lama is why. Tzarich means needs. In this case, it's talking to a male, and I know it's talking to a male because tagid is conjugated for a single male, and ma yesh lecha, that lecha, like I explained before, is also towards a male. Okay, so tagid, ma yesh lecha? Tell me what's with you. Lama tzarich, why do you need? And tzarich is again conjugated for you need. La'asot, to do or to make. Balagan. Balagan is a great Hebrew word. We've talked about this word before. It is not Hebrew in origin, but is used quite often in Israel. It is slang. It means chaos or a mess or craziness. Any of those things, unstructured situation, but chaos is a better word for it. A mess is also a good word. Kol pa'am mechadash, and that's our other expression, right? Every time. And now the from scratch is how we would say this in English, right? In Hebrew, you could simply just say kol pa'am mechadash and understand it's every time. But it's that mechadash to make it clear, like you do this every time, right? We say this in English, you do this every time, but it's important to understand you do this every time, not necessarily like clockwork, right? Like at 8 p.m. on Monday evenings here in Israel, but rather every time we meet or every time this happens, you do this. So it's not necessarily depending on time, but maybe on other circumstances, you do this thing that is balagan, that is chaos. Okay, so tagid, מה יש לך? למה צריך לעשות בלגן כל פעם מחדש? Tell me what's with you, or what's wrong with you? Why do you have to make a mess every single time from scratch, or every time? Okay, either way, you can translate that. Those are two great expressions you're going to hear regularly. מה יש לך? And כל פעם מחדש. Let's move on to the next one. זה מה יש or זה מה שיש. This is a great one. You're going to hear this one a lot. This is the Hebrew equivalent of one of the equivalents of the shrug and the hands up, right? זה מה יש, זה מה שיש. That is a classic expression in Israel. The shrug is a great nonverbal expression of that, along with some other words. But this expression either said ze ma yesh, or the correct, grammatically correct ze ma sheyesh, means that's what there is. That's the case. That's what there is. That's all. You can infer from it that's the case. That's all I know. That's what we got. All of those things are inferred in this. Ze ma yesh or ze ma sheyesh. They both mean the exact same thing. The only difference is ze ma sheyesh is the correct form grammatically. Ze ma yesh was popularized on TV on a couple different shows, and it reflects Aliyah specifically from the former Soviet Union. There was one caricature on the satire show Eretz Nehederet, a very popular, very important show in Israeli culture. And one of the recurring characters that was supposed to be from the former Soviet Union would say ze ma yesh in a very thick Russian accent. And that has taken on, been heard and been used regularly in Israel, even though grammatically it should be ze ma sheyesh. In this case, this expression, this use of ma here is also very important. This is not, this does mean what? It literally translates to this, ze is this or that, ma is what, the is inferred here, in both the ze and the ma, what, yesh, there is. Okay, this, what there is. But in better English, that's what there is. That's what it is. Either way is how you could translate it. So look at this sample sentence. I'm sure you've heard this one before, if not used it, and certainly you will be using it in the near future, based on just how things operate here in Israel. And this is a conversation between two people, as you see with the lines here. Slicha, yesh od tzmachim b'machsan. Sorry, ze ma sheyesh. Okay, if you were speaking this at a regular tempo, slicha, yesh od tzmachim b'machsan. Sorry, ze ma sheyesh. Okay, slicha, excuse me, the polite way to get someone's attention and to get their support or help. Yesh od tzmachim b'machsan, here in row 7. Yesh od, are there more? Od is more. In this case, yesh both means there is and there are. In this case, it's there are, because the next word is tzmachim. Tzmachim are plants. Okay, tzemach is one plant, tzmachim are plants. B'machsan. Machsan is a locker, it's storage, but in this case, we're using it to mean, like you would say in English, in the back, like the back of the store. Okay, that's the meaning that we're using it here. And that's how you would use it in everyday life in Israel. It's not necessarily a literal closet or a locker in the back. It's the back of the store. Slicha, yesh od tzmachim b'machsan. Do you have more plants in storage is one way you could translate it, but it's also best translated as, do you have more plants in the back? And the reply is, sorry with the vowels here, but this is a slang word, so therefore it's not going to be. There we go. Sorry, ze ma sheyesh. Sorry, or as we say in English, sorry. But you could also say mitzta'er or mitnatzel, both mean apologies, sorry, or just the English sorry. Ze ma sheyesh. This is what there is. Right? So if you go to a plant store and you ask the first question, and the reply is "Ze ma sheyesh," it means that there is nothing else in the back stock. There's nothing else but what's on sale here. And obviously this can apply to many different things, right? This could be in a grocery store, this could be in a clothing store, this could be anything where you're asking, is there more in the back, or is there more of a certain item? Ze ma sheyesh. This is also used in a larger sense. Ze ma sheyesh. In terms of, you could say, a lack of good hires in a company, or anything that's a little bit more abstract than a physical item for purchase, although I suppose employees and employment, that's a little bit more concrete. But the point though is, ze ma sheyesh is what we use a lot in Hebrew to indicate the shrug with the hands up. Meh, ze ma sheyesh. Okay, let's move on. Next one. Kmo shetzarich. I love kmo shetzarich. I use this one regularly every day. You're going to hear this one every day. It's a great one to have under your belt. Kmo shetzarich is literally like that needs. Don't translate this literally. Again, these are expressions. Some of these are more idiomatic than others. Kmo shetzarich is best translated as it should be. Okay, if you want to know how to say as it should be, this is it. Kmo shetzarich. Okay, here's a sample sentence to further illustrate kmo shetzarich. Sof sof הסופש מגיע, וזה כל כך well, that's wrong. Sorry for that. זה כל כך שקט בחוץ כמו שצריך. Let me read this again. Apologies. There are some issues with the nikud here. סוף סוף הסופש מגיע, וזה כל כך שקט בחוץ כמו שצריך. If I was saying this at a regular tempo, I would say, סוף סוף הסופש מגיע, וזה כל כך שקט בחוץ כמו שצריך. Okay, let's break down this sentence. Sof sof is taking the word sof, which means end, and when we double it up, sof sof, it's best translated as finally. So finally, ha-sofash. We've talked about this word before. Sofash, as you see with those two apostrophes between the second to last and last letters, is an abbreviation for something. In this case, sofash stands for sof ha-shavua. Sof ha-shavua, the weekend. Okay, remember, in Israel, we can say both Shabbat Shalom and we can say Sofash Na'im. And you're going to hear both expressions, not just because not everyone in Israel is Jewish, but also not everyone is Shabbat observant. Keep that in mind, please, when you're addressing to someone at the end of the week. Sofash Na'im means have a nice weekend, or have a pleasant weekend. Sofash is the quote unquote easier way to say Sofa Shavua. It's one less syllable, I'm not mistaken. And we've talked about this before. In Hebrew, we like fewer syllables and we love abbreviations and acronyms. In this case, sofash. We've talked about this word before, but it's a good review. Sofash. So sof sof ha sofash magia. The weekend has finally arrived, or finally the weekend has arrived. Magia means arrives. It's the present tense. And you could say this either in the past tense, higia, referring to sofa shavua, which is masculine, or magia, it is arriving. Either way is understood. We are at the precipice of the weekend beginning. If not, it has already begun. Whether it's Thursday night or Friday morning, that's up to you to decide. The point though is sofash magia. Okay, the weekend finally arrived, it's here. וזה כל כך שקט בחוץ. וזה, and it's, even though זה means this or that, this is how we say in a general sense, it's. כל כך. Again, Hebrew loves abbreviations and acronyms. Another one we have here after sofash is כל כך. When you see kaf, kaf, with those two apostrophes in the middle, it stands for כל כך. Kol kach is best translated as so, or so much, or such. In this case, so, as we would say in English, the weekend has finally arrived and it's so quiet outside. Ze kol kach shaket bachutz. You're really emphasizing how shaket, quiet, it is bachutz, outside. And then our expression, kmo shetzarich, as it should be, right? The weekend has finally arrived and it's so quiet outside, as it should be. Many of you know this, wherever you are in the country, whether it's Thursday night, not necessarily Thursday night, Friday afternoon, Friday evening, even Saturday, everything slows down, is a bit quieter. Even here in the bustling center of Tel Aviv, it gets like this Friday afternoon. Okay, סוף סוף הסופש מגיע וזה כל כך שקט בחוץ, כמו שצריך, as it should be. Maybe you don't like that. I certainly do. I know a lot of people, I'm certainly here on the call like that as well. So, כמו שצריך, as it should be. Great expression to have under your belt. Next is next, hal'a. Another great word. Now, a lot of people are going to be writing in the Q&A, and I already see it's lighting up because you're probably going to ask questions or trying to correct me on previous expressions. And this is probably another one you're going to ask me about, hal'a. Hal'a is best translated as onward or next. Before you start writing to me, wait a minute, isn't that kadima? Or wait a minute, isn't that yala? Hal'a is Hebrew. Yala is not Hebrew, it's slang from Arabic, and we use it in everyday expression. And kadima also means onward and next, but it has the notion of forward, that there's movement going forward. Hal'a is not necessarily about direction. It is about onward. It's moving on to the next thing. And that's why next is in quotation marks. Let me give you an example. One great example is, by the way, if you're going down a list of something with someone, and you're marking things off and they ask you and they say hal'a, meaning next one in the list. Okay, so it's not necessarily direction, except on this list, it's more sequential. So here's something that is sequential, the sample sentence. Zehu, siyamnu leharkiv et madaf hasfarim. Hal'a, bo'u nisader et hasfarim. Okay, I would never say it like that. I said it slowly for your convenience. I'm going to say it like how I would say this sentence. Zeu, סיימנו להרכיב את מדף הספרים. הלאה, בואו נסדר את הספרים. I wouldn't say this exact sentence, but that would be the pace and the alighting between letters that I would normally say this at. Okay, zeu, that's it, or this is it. סיימנו להרכיב את מדף הספרים. Siyamnu. Siyamnu, we've talked about this word before. It means we finished. We completed something. Okay, lisayem means to finish or complete something, as does that other verb that you've probably been taught earlier than lisayem, which is ligmor or ligmor. But in everyday Hebrew and in everyday polite Hebrew, we will always use lisayem. Okay, if you need a further illustration of why we don't use ligmor to finish, think about it. We can discuss that again in another conversation, but it's also on YouTube, as well as on other websites online. Hint, if you can't figure out what legmor means. Anyways, zehu, siyamnu leharkiv. Leharkiv or leharkiv means both to construct something, put something together. When you go to IKEA, also known as IKEA in the United States, but in else of the world, including here in Israel, it's IKEA. You can go at the end after you purchase your various products, and you can go to a section that's called Hovalot veharkavot, or Hovala veharkava. Hovala means movers, right? So if you need a delivery of what you just purchased because it's too big for your car or you don't have a car, veharkava, harkava, installation. Right, so let's say you're buying a madaf sfarim. Madaf sfarim, bookcase. One of the several ways, by the way, you can say bookcase in Hebrew. One of them is madaf sfarim. A madaf is simply a shelf. Okay, but when added with the word for books, sfarim, it indicates a bookshelf. Madaf sfarim, right? So if you needed to leharkiv madaf sfarim, need to construct or install a book shelf, you could do that by yourself, or you could ask that from IKEA, from their staff. Lehalkiv is also the word we use to indicate putting on glasses, to wear glasses, regular reading glasses or sunglasses. It's also the verb that we use when forming a coalition government. A coalition in a government, lehalkiv memshala, to put together a government. And unfortunately, we're going to be hearing that word quite a bit in the next few months as we are on the precipice, I keep using that word tonight, of new elections. Okay, so this sentence, again, Zeu siyamnu leharkiv et madaf hasfarim. That's it, or this is it. We finished constructing or putting together et madaf hasfarim. We finished constructing the bookshelf. Okay, et is used here before direct object. That's its purpose in Hebrew. So we're talking about a very specific item. And then hala, bo nisader et hasfarim. Now or next, let's arrange the books. Okay, we did one part of it. Now we got to do the second part. It's not movement, right? It's not, okay, we got to this store. Now let's go to the next store. Kadima, let's go to the next store. This is hala in a list of sequential things, in a list of steps that you need to do, right? After you create a bookshelf, the next logical thing to do is to fill it with books. Okay, zeu. סיימנו להרכיב את מדף הספרים. That's it, we finished constructing the bookshelf. הלאה, בואו נסדר את הספרים. Next, let's arrange the books. Okay, that's the word הלאה. Great word to use in saying הלאה, next. It's best also, you could translate it as President Bartlett on the West Wing saying, what's next? Hala is a great way to say that. Instead of asking as a question, it's saying, what's next? As a, let's move on. Hala. Okay. We're 15. Zchutcha. Zchutcha or zchutech. This means you're right. Zchut with a zayin means right, R-I-G-H-T, not direction right, but right as in a law or privilege, zchut. And that cha at the end is the possessive, yours, masculine. Right? So if I said zchutcha, it's your right, referring to a man. Zchutech to a woman, it's your right. Same word, it's just who we're referring to. Zchutcha, zchutech. You're going to hear this word a lot, right? We're all about rights here in general. We are here, whether it's here in Israel or elsewhere around the world, zchutcha, zchutech, you're right. This word came up last night, literally last night and this morning as I was arguing with Wolt, our wonderful, in quotation marks, delivery service here in Tel Aviv, also in Jerusalem and other places. And I was trying to move the conversation on to the point of understanding I, as the consumer, am not happy here. So as you see in this sentence, it's quite the consumer activism I took on to describe this word, which I think is great. I'm sure many of you have had frustration with a service provider, be it a delivery or a store or something you bought. This is a great sample sentence to keep in your back pocket to use on a regular basis. Okay. זכותך לסמוך על מה שהשליח טוען, כמו שזכותי לשקול מחדש להזמין מכם בעתיד. Wow, is this such an aggressive sentence? But it needed to be said, and I'm sure you need to use this one at some point. זכותך, it's your right, לסמוך על, to trust. לסמוך על means to trust. Okay, and it's always followed by the preposition al, to trust in something or someone. So in this case, to trust in someone. זכותך לסמוך על מה שהשליח טוען. It's your right to trust על מה שהשליח טוען. Now this ma here definitely correlates to the ma in English that we would say, right? And it's like the ze ma sheyesh, also that we used before, or ma yesh lecha. It's that what that in English does it is we just use the word what. In Spanish, this is the equivalent of lo que, which is a little bit more descriptive if you know Spanish. But it certainly is just what explains it here, not as a question. It's your right to trust, lismoch, al ma shehashaliach toen. Remember, it has to be followed by al. Ma shehashaliach toen. It's your right to trust what the shaliach, delivery person, to'en, argues or insists. Lit'on is to insist or to argue or to make the case for. in this context. So, זכותך לסמוך על מה שהשליח טוען. It's your right to trust what the delivery guy insists. כמו שזכותי, just like, כמו means like, in this case, just like, זכותי. So if זכותך is yours, masculine, and זכותך is yours, feminine, זכותי, my right. Okay, זכותי. This is the equivalent of הזכות שלי. But when you're talking at this pace and you're usually riled up like I was when I was saying the sentence, זכותי is both more formal and it's easier to say because it's one less syllable. Instead of שלי, it's זכותי. Right? Let's write that down. One less syllable. כמו שזכותי לשקול מחדש להזמין מכם בעתיד. Just like it's my right, לשקול מחדש. Remember we had מחדש at the beginning of this lesson. מחדש means anew or from scratch. This time it's לשקול מחדש, to weigh. לשקול, like the shekel, we've talked about this verb a lot before. לשקול means to weigh, W-E-I-G-H, like to weigh something in the shuk or in a grocery store, or to weigh your mishkal is your weight. I talked about mishkalim last week with grammar. לשקול מחדש, just like it's my right, כמו שזכותי לשקול מחדש, to weigh, to reconsider is another way to think about לשקול מחדש. To reconsider, להזמין מכם בעתיד. להזמין, to order, or to invite, in this case to order. מכם, from you. בעתיד, in the future. It should be בעתיד, not בעתיד. Sorry, just one second. Okay. So, start again at the beginning. זכותך, it's your right. לסמוך על מה שהשליח טוען. It's your right to trust what the delivery guy has told you, has argued, has insisted. כמו שזכותי, just like it's my right, לשקול מחדש, to reconsider, להזמין מכם בעתיד, ordering from you in the future. Okay. Very aggressive, but that's what we do sometimes in negotiations and doing business, and your rights as consumers to say something like this. So, זכותך, it's your right. זכותי, it's my right. Okay, and you can conjugate this further for all the different, it's your right, it's his right, it's their right, it's our right, and so forth. But just know this is another way to say it, and it's a very powerful word, obviously. It's your right, it's my right, and so forth. Okay, another important one, כפי ש. כפי ש, you're going to hear all the time. כפי, you're going to hear a lot. כפי is best translated, as you see here in row 18, as according to, or as, or like. But like in quotation marks, because it's not like or as, like the word we just had, כמו. Okay, it's not a literal translation of like or as כמו is. This is more according to, and you'll see it in this sentence. כפי שדווח בחדשות, בתי הספר לא ייפתחו השבוע כרגיל. Now, full disclosure, this is a complicated sentence. And I put it in here on purpose because we talk a lot about media literacy, right? And every time we go over the news together, I emphasize that the news is often written in the passive voice. This is written in the passive voice. Okay, so it may look complicated. I promise we're going to go over it together, but we've gone over this before if you follow us on Cafe Oleh regularly. So let's start. כפי שדווח בחדשות. כפי ש, according to, or as, or like, דווח. דווח is the passive past tense of the verb לדווח. לדווח means to report. So if it's the past passive tense of it, it is reported. As reported where? בחדשות. כפי שדווח בחדשות, as reported on the news or in the news. בתי הספר לא ייפתחו השבוע כרגיל. בתי הספר. בתי הספר, הספר is the plural of בית הספר, which is school or the school. In this case, it's referring to all public schools. Okay, that's why it's the plural, because it's referring, sorry, it's why it's the definite. Batei hasefer, all schools. Okay, it's understood to mean all public schools, which are the vast majority of schools in the state of Israel. Batei hasefer. Okay, this is a compound word, just like in English, schoolhouse. Same thing here. Batei hasefer. It's habatim turns into batei, and sefer turns into hasefer. Okay, batei hasefer, the schools. Lo yipatchu. Yipatchu is also passive. I know that because of the vowel pattern here, and that there's two yods at the beginning. If it was active, it would be yiftechu. But when we talk about schools being opened, just like in English, we say it in Hebrew, yipatchu, future tense passive. Kfi sheduvach b'chadashot, as was reported, or according to what was reported in the news, however you want to translate that, but according to what was reported in the news, or as was reported, as reported in the news. Either way works. Okay, duvach, passive past tense. Batei sefer lo yipatchu, future passive, because again, this is the news. We love our passive. Schools will not be opened hashavua, this week, kiragil, as usual. Okay, so we put this all together. כפי שדווח בחדשות, בתי הספר לא ייפתחו השבוע כרגיל. As reported in the news, schools will not be opened this week as usual. Or you can say it in English, will not be open as usual this week, or this week as usual, however you want to say it, be open or be opened. Okay, just know in Hebrew it would be passive. I actually had to change this sentence in the last hour and a half, as the strike by teachers that was rescinded for the rest of this week came back in, as there was a very strong impasse in negotiations over salaries in public schools. Okay, so kfisha, you're going to hear a lot. According to, as, or like. You can use this all the time. Kfisha amarti lachem, anu mishtamshim bekfi harbe pamim. As I have told you, כפי שאמרתי לכם, אנו משתמשים בכפי כל הזמן. We use the expression כפי all the time. Okay, next one. Two more, and then get to your questions. תודה מראש and בהקדם. We've gotten requests in the past to write how to write business letters or formal Hebrew. This is it without getting into more formal Hebrew, because frankly, not all of our Hebrew is up to muster to write a full letter in formal Hebrew. These two expressions will always elevate your Hebrew to a more formal level, or to a more polite level. Toda merosh and behekdem. Toda merosh. Toda merosh best translates as thanks in advance, or thank you in advance. Toda means thank you or thanks. Merosh. Merosh comes from the word rosh, head, or think advanced in this case. So thanks in advance. Thanks from the get-go, right? I use this a lot in business and in negotiations when I am prompting the other person to reply, behekdem, our next word. Behekdem, soon or shortly. Yes, it is a synonym of the word bekarov, which means soon, but behekdem is better, more proper, more formal Hebrew. And it's a little bit more polite as well than to say bekarov. Behekdem comes from the same root as lehakdim, to be early. Kadima, that I referenced before, meaning forward. Toda merosh and behekdem. Let's see how these two words are used. And I've written this sentence in emails and correspondence quite a lot in my line of business and in general. Toda merosh al tshuvatcha, nia bekesher behekdem. Very formal, very distancing from the other person, showing both deference but also seriousness to whatever I'm asking a reply for. Toda merosh, thanks in advance. Al, because it's followed by regarding or about or on. Tshuvatcha. Remember, we just had zchutcha. It's your right. Tshuvatcha is התשובה שלך. Thanks in advance for תשובתך. Remember, in Hebrew, we can show possession two ways. We can take the word shel and add to it the possessive suffix, or we can just take that possessive suffix and stick it to the word that we're modifying, right? So instead of saying ha-tshuva shelcha, you can also say in Hebrew, tshuvatcha. It's more formal Hebrew. We don't often talk like this every day because it's also a little tricky in your head to switch. It's easier to say hatshuva shelcha because you can just think how you're going to modify the word tshuva, like adding a adjective to it. And this is sort of like an adjective saying it's not just any answer, it's your answer. Or you can add to it this suffix. Okay, so toda merosh al tshuvatcha. Thanks in advance for your answer. Or thanks in advance for your reply. You could also say tkuvatcha, your reply. Both of them mean the same thing here, right? Thanks in advance for your reply. I like to write this at the end of emails to indicate like I'm actually waiting to hear from you and I expect to hear from you. Niyeh bekesher behekdem. Niyeh bekesher. You've heard tiyeh bekesher before, be in touch as a command. Niyeh bekesher is we will be in touch. Instead of you be in touch, we will be in touch. Niyeh bekesher. When? Behekdem. Soon or shortly. Okay, very, very formal sentence, but a really good one, a very professional one, a very serious one to use in correspondence. Again, the rest of the letter, the rest of the correspondence should match this level of Hebrew. So if your Hebrew is not there, at least you'll be able to recognize this when it's written to you. So formal letters from government agencies or utility companies or any companies in general will be along the lines of this level of Hebrew. Okay, toda merosh al tshuvatcha. Thanks in advance for your answer. Niyeh bekesher behekdem. We will be in touch accordingly, or in this case, shortly, behekdem. The next word, however, is accordingly, and it sounds a lot like behekdem, hence my little slip up there. Behekdem means soon or shortly, but behetem with a taf and an aleph mean accordingly or in accordance with. Another great word. I use this word in English. I definitely use this word in Hebrew all the time, also to both show distance and reverence, but also seriousness to a matter. So we just had toda merosh and behekdem, thanks in advance and shortly. Now we have behetem. Behetem is from the same root as lahatim, to be compatible with something, or something is beteum, with something else, is in accordance with, or it's in harmony with. Behetem, accordingly or in accordance with, a great word. And you've probably heard something along the lines of this sentence, certainly if you live here in Tel Aviv in the last few days. Behetem lahanchayot hachadashot, in accordance with the hanchayot hachadashot. Behetem lahanchayot hachadashot. Behetem is often followed by the preposition le. בהתאם להנחיות החדשות, in accordance with the new directives. You'll hear this, by the way, a lot on buses, in subways. We don't yet have a subway here in Israel. In the airport, in other places where they're talking about corona restrictions and guidelines. בהתאם למשרד הבריאות, in accordance with the health ministry. Okay, בהתאם להנחיות החדשות, in accordance with the new directives. אסור לרכוב על אופניים חשמליים ללא קסדה. In accordance with the new directives, אסור לרכוב על אופניים חשמליים. אסור, it's forbidden. לרכוב על. לרכוב, we've talked about this verb before when it comes to travel. לרכוב is to ride, but it's the verb that we use to ride in a vehicle, as in to drive it. So a bike, a motorcycle, a scooter, any of those things, we use the verb lirkov al. Okay, to ride on is the best way to translate it, to get it to stick in your head with English. It is forbidden to ride or on ofanaim chashmalim. Ofanaim is a bicycle. Chashmalim is electric, and it modifies ofanaim, which is plural, so chashmalim. Okay, asur lirkov al ofanaim chashmalim. It is forbidden to ride an electric bike, Lelo kasta, without a kasta, helmet. That is, by the way, the new law. Certainly, it's now being enforced here in Tel Aviv, thank God, along with other things to limit the where electric vehicles can be ridden and how. But in accordance with, or according to, the new directives. According to is another way to translate this, if that works for you. Asur lirkov al ofanayim chashmaliyim lelo kasta. It is forbidden to ride an e-bike without a helmet, without riding a helmet. Wearing a helmet, excuse me. The wearing here is in parentheses in English because you don't need the verb. Al ofanayim chashmalim lelo kasta, it's implied, right? It's not forbidden. They're not saying that it's forbidden to ride a bike while holding a helmet. It's assumed that a helmet is needed to be worn on your head, not to be in your bag or to be on the brake handle, right? So you don't need to add the verb to wear a helmet. It's simply lelo kasta, because it's implied the wearing. Okay. That is the end of our words today. I see we have a bunch of questions, but just know these are words and expressions of varying complexity, of varying levels of Hebrew, but you're going to hear these words all the time, and they definitely reflect your respective levels of English. Without not knowing all 120 of you on this call right now, I can safely assume you've used the English equivalent of these words on a regular basis, if not in the recent past. All the better to know them in Hebrew as well. Let's get started with some questions. Esther asks, Ma yesh lecha usually means what do you have? Yes, Esther, it literally translates to Ma yesh lecha, what do you have, but that is not the context here. Let me make that very clear. When someone asks you Ma yesh lecha in that tone and with the context of that sentence here, it's what's with you. Ma'itcha, Esther, she asks a follow-up question. What's wrong with saying ma'itcha? There's nothing wrong with saying, Esther, ma'itcha. Ma'itcha literally translates what's with you. Okay, but ma'yesh lecha is also the expression you're going to hear quite regularly in Hebrew in Israel. Again, these are words and expressions that I'm not asking you to use. I'm asking you to be cognizant of them because you are going to hear them on a regular basis. You don't have to use any of these, but you should know the Hebrew that's being spoken to you. Okay, so we get also another others. Ma'itcha does mean what's with you, but also the expression is ma'yesh lecha. Okay, both of them are used in the same context. Sanford asks, when I said solely in this sample sentence, instead of writing mitzta'er or mitnatzel, great question. What's the difference between those two words? And mitzta'er, let me actually write this down farther down here. Actually, right here. Mitzta'er and mitnatzel. Two different words, but mean very similar things. Certainly in English, we translate them very similar. Mitzta'er, our first word here on the right, means to be sorry, to become sorry, to have tsar, sorrow. Okay, lehitzta'er is to become sorry about something or to be sorry over something. Mitnatzel, however, is to apologize. So just because you are mitzta'er, you are not necessarily going to mitnatzel. But mitzta'er is simply used in modern Hebrew as sorry. It's the equivalent of saying sorry. Mitzta'er, sorry. But it's not the same thing, just like in English, when you say sorry, is that the same thing as saying I apologize? Not necessarily. Mitnatzel, however, is apology. I apologize. Ani mitnatzel, I apologize. Ani mitzta'er, I am sorry. Just like in English, we have the difference here in Hebrew. Naomi, could you do something on abbreviations? Yes, Naomi, we've had at least 2 different lessons on abbreviations and acronyms. Please go to youtube.com, and that goes for everyone else here. We've covered abbreviations quite comprehensively, and there's always more to add. But yes, we have done a full lesson on abbreviations. It's on the YouTube playlist. But thank you for asking that. It's a great reminder to remind all of you. Mili asks, I hear mamash much more than kol kach when people are conversing on the street. Is it less formal? You'll hear all of them, right? Sof sof הסופש מגיע וזה ממש שקט בחוץ. You could also say זה שקט מאוד בחוץ. Or you could say וזה כל כך שקט בחוץ. All of them are okay. They all mean the same thing. It's really quiet. All three of those are great examples. Kol kach is best translated as so. Mamash and me'od best get translated as very. That's the difference. Okay. Last question. What is the conjugation of mitnatzel? Mitnatzel, mitnatzelet, mitnatzlim, mitnatzlot. A great resource, Ava, and everyone else who's forgotten, PEALIM.com. Type in any verb, any conjugation, you will get the full conjugation along with its root, its shoresh, all of its different applications. It's a great resource to conjugation. Okay. Any last questions? Wonderful. One last question I see here, Michael, since spelling is so important, can we go over spelling rules? Yes, Michael, we've gone over some spelling rules in the past as they deal with transliteration. You can find that on YouTube. We'll go over future spelling rules. Again, we just did a massive grammar class last week, so I want to give a little break to grammar, but that is a great point. We will go over spelling rules again. That's a great one. Okay. Without further ado, Toda Rabah, thank you all so much for tuning in. Like I said, this lesson will be up on YouTube in the next few days, so you can go back and review it at your leisure, pause it, write down the words, whatever you want to do with it. Again, if you have any questions for any requests, for topics, please first look at the YouTube playlist, youtube.com. Type in Cafe Oleh, you'll see all our previous lessons, and write to us by email at nefesh b'nefesh with your requests, and we will see you all next week. Lehitraot, take care.